And we're live. I just want to say that we're not really live. Today, myself and my bud Giff here, we're going to talk about a topic that always ruffles some feathers, and maybe this time too, which is the notion of product executive roles and the whole good old fashioned like who should have a seat at the table? Chief technology officer, chief product officer, chief design officer. What the heck is that? And kind of the roles of functional leaders, meaning the leaders of organizations of craftspeople like designers or engineers or product managers, and the notion of executive work, meaning people deploying resources and capital. So basically, Giff, let me tee this up with the easy question. How do you feel about the single executive to rule them all? Call it CPTO, C3PO. I don't even know what the heck they're called anymore. Where do you stand on this debate?
Totally context specific, which is the answer to all product questions.
Damn it, product podcasts are the worst.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the shorthand that I have concluded is that in times of great change, it's really helpful to have fewer people at the executive table at the very top and more pieces going into fewer minds. It is when you need to move the ship, whether you're transforming the company or you're making some like huge bets architecturally or you're platforming or just strategically, or you're trying to change culture or methods or things like that. Even if you're incredibly aligned with a head of engineering as a product leader, you will move slower than if everyone reports to you. That's just been my experience. I've lived both worlds. I've had to be the CPTO probably 3 times in my career, and and so it brings a lot of speed in times of change. But I will say that I've had moments where I've had an incredible partnership. So my partnership with Yvette Pasqua at Meetup was incredible. She and I had different perspectives on things, but all the things that mattered, we were totally in lockstep. She was an incredible partner. She made coming to work really fun, and she, had an eye on things and was able to sort of make elements of engineering robust in ways that I couldn't. You know, I could lead the team, but I needed a really good lieutenant under me that I was managing to be able to do it. But the last thing I'll say is that, the executive team wasn't that bloated. The two of us were at the table there, and having two of us rather than one of us for two voices was actually useful at times. So there were multiple benefits to that partnership that were really effective. But yes, Yvette did end up leaving the organization. I inherited her organization. Thankfully, I inherited an organization that she had in a pretty good place. And so there were things that I thought I could work on, but I didn't have to completely overhaul. But it was remarkable how much faster things went when all of a sudden it all did tie into one person.
Well, you kind of hit on most of my talking points there. So
Sorry.
thanks. No, it's okay. I think that's a good sign, even though these conversations are at their worst when it's just like two people agreeing vehemently. Also agreeing on Yvette being the bee's knees. I haven't gotten to work with her, but I've had an amount of interactions with her, and what a gem. But that aside, because not every company has an Yvette, not every company has a GIF. What I've found is kind of the central theses that are guiding my thinking here is you already mentioned it, especially in times of change.
Yeah.
And I would go and argue that in like a startup scale up environment, there are no other times than times of change.
Right.
Uh, the limiting the number of people around kind of the most central table is a critical thing. So you have to force yourself as a CEO to think of, can I pare this leadership team down even more? Because it's incredibly hard to get even 5 people to rapidly agree and execute on something, let alone what's very common these days in like kind of $10 million a year startup or scale ups, to see like 7, 8, 9 person leadership teams.
12, 14.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Luckily, those are slightly rarer, but not unheard of. And then you kind of start getting to this like, okay, why are all these people here? And often ends up being kind of either a bottoms up push of function X needs a seat around the table.
Yep.
Design doesn't feel valued. Engineering doesn't feel valued. Demand generation doesn't feel valued unless there's a seat around the table. Or a top down pull where the CEO almost views the leadership team as like the chief project management enclave, meaning like in order for the CEO to be able to kind of govern every single thing happening in every department, they need that direct visibility. It almost becomes like a dependency management thing and not an executive team, which it really should be like a small team of strategic decision makers deploying capital.
Yep.
And so usually, like to your point, it's not the worst thing from a personal dynamics perspective to have a chief technology officer and a chief product officer, which kind of is the norm, because during good times, it is very nice to have like two people banging the table with the same tune when you're faced with like 7 other executives who are like, just ship the features faster and shut up. You know what I mean? But the way I kind of look at it is like executives, especially in times of scarce resources, are insanely expensive, right? And so if in the best case scenario, you have this like super lockstep, like kind of agree on everything to a degree, or just like bring different perspectives, it's almost like you're paying double for what should be achievable with one person. So it's almost like a waste of like, I've oftentimes found working with really good CTOs, and I've had a couple of really good relationships myself. In the best of times, I'm like, why am I here? This person is has essentially the same opinion as me. So you're not getting the benefits of two people. But then, of course, in times of strife, in times of tension, when again, especially if you're defining product as product management and not as in the whole kit and caboodle,
Yep.
when there's a tension of like to make it like incredibly high contrast, like ship new features, rebuild the things, you know,
Yep.
scale, like rapid scale versus stability. Um, it's really hard to make those decisions if you have to build them through consensus. And I think that's a large part of what you're alluding to, like the
Yeah.
efficiency is like when somebody is on the hook for making those decisions, hearing out their lieutenants, hearing out the experts, it almost becomes like a politician's job. Like politicians know nothing about anything, but they listen to expert. They should. I mean, I know current state doesn't always reflect this, but it becomes a listening exercise and understanding design needs, business needs, engineering needs, but ultimately being the one in charge of making those decisions, right?
It's also, it's how people in the chain underneath the C-suite react as well. That's been dramatic. And there's some like low-level subconscious human thing that I don't quite have my finger on, but it's real. So a different example from a previous company was data didn't report to me for a little bit. And all of a sudden, we decided to have data report to me. Now, I had a great relationship with the data team. We got along well. We were aligned. They were working very hard to sort of solve my needs and to work together. And I was listening to them as well. And so, again, best intentions, right? Everyone was working well together. I had no frustrations at all. And yet, all of a sudden, as soon as they got tucked under me, like everything seemed to go a whole lot faster. People just listen to their bosses a little closer, a little more intently. And I don't know, some of the friction that if someone said, is there friction between you and data? I would have said, no, there's no friction. And yet somehow there was friction because as soon as they reported to me, it was even faster. You know, and it's like we had grease on the gears as opposed to before we clearly we didn't. So, and I've seen this in multiple situations like that, whether it was all of a sudden customer success reporting to me or other things. So that dynamic, I think, is a factor, and it requires the departments to, in some ways, all the departments to this is a harsh way of putting it, but get over themselves a little bit. Um, you can't have a chief design officer, chief technology officer, chief product management officer, chief success officer. You can't just have a billion people at the C-suite. It doesn't work. We all know that large groups of humans, the more humans you add to the communication network, the slower everything gets. Where this breaks down is when you try to consolidate on the wrong person. It only works if the person who has these multiple things coming into them has a great deal of respect for the things funneling into them. So where I see this fail is they take a business person who really isn't steeped in product, for example, and says, okay, I need someone to manage product and design, so you're going to report into them. And the product people and the designers are like, okay, they're a salesperson and I respect sales, but like they don't get my world. Like the problems I'm bubbling up aren't getting any respect. And so people are like, we're not valued here.
Yeah.
Then it leads to we're not valued here. Now we're going to go someplace where we are valued. So you can only group multiple functions under one person if they have the knowledge, the empathy, the respect for those functions. Otherwise, it will fail.
That's absolutely true. And I think the biggest trick here is I don't think in a lot of people's frame of reference it's really that clear, but you need a clear separation between functional leadership, which you'd usually see on the director and VP layer. Like, how do we execute on a craft? How do we do product management here? How do we do engineering? How do we do DevOps? How do we do data? And executive work, which really is at the end of the day deeply cross-functional, focused on the P&L, focused on the business, focused on enterprise value. And those have to be separate, because I think where this has gone wrong many times, and every time I talk to people who are vehemently against a central, like, one executive over multiple functions, almost always when I hear their lived experience where things have gone horribly wrong, it's almost always basically a VP level person, like a VP of product level person who only thinks about product management, VP of engineering person who only thinks about engineering. And then you tuck design under that person, even if there is a lieutenant, like a, design director of product design or whatever, it'll go horribly wrong because that person's wired to see the world through their functional lens. And you see this also in like, I'm sure you've noticed this shift towards like chief revenue officers, which is like market. Yeah, it's amazing when you have somebody who thinks of the entire customer experience from like top of funnel pipeline generation to conversion all the way to expansion and retention, aligning things like, SDRs and marketing and sales and customer success and even customer support. Things should start working a lot better. But again, it's hard to view from like a marketing perspective because there's, to use the dumb term, there's a little bit of healthy tension always between sales and marketing.
Right.
And that can go horribly wrong if you've got like a hardcore sales bull managing marketing if they don't understand the nuances of every step of the funnel.
I think a lot of companies use these titles as a way to get the executive that they want. And like, okay, here's this killer sales leader. I really want them. I'm going to, dangle not just a nice salary at them, but I'm going to dangle chief revenue officer. And it'll look great on the resume, and they're going to come here because they want that title. And what you've just done is you've said, I've got a salesperson who is a sales leader, and now they've got, as you say, like a broader part of that whole go-to-market function, marketing, customer success, et cetera. And they're not looking and they're not caring about the end to end. And so if they did, it could really work. And if they don't, then it can break down. They come in with blinders on for key sections.
So you mentioned the whole kind of many parts of the org need to get over themselves. And clearly we've all run into like product managers whinging about like, well, we can't report to a CTO, which happens, right? Like sometimes product is under a CTO, or engineers being like, we can't report into product. Where I think there's a couple things. I do want to rapidly change the mindset of the whole world that the P in CPO is not product management. It is product. The whole freaking thing that we bring to market and create customer value with. And that's very much inclusive of all aspects of it. But that also means that product management people need to also get off their high horse of like, product, and you railed against this on LinkedIn the other day about like product led. That shouldn't and doesn't mean product management on a pedestal. It's product, the thing that drives customer value,
Yeah,
being the
yeah.
central focal point of the company. But the same thing goes here is like, if there is a CPO at the executive table, that does not mean it's like product management now has the steering wheel to the detriment of design, to the detriment of engineering, to the detriment of data. It what I would love to see more is CTOs flip the middle letter to CPOs, because what we see today as chief technology officers, it's often really seasoned functional leaders who can lead all aspects of engineering and technological choices. It's not a lot you have to layer on top of that to be a fully functional chief product officer. And I think that precedent of seasoned technologists taking that last little step to executive leadership would really pave the way for us understanding that it's not chief product management officer.
And I mean, look, it works when you have an engineer who is incredibly business savvy and interested and focused, and it fails when they're not. All the jobs really converge at the top, to your point earlier, right? What you're worried about, you're not making engineering decisions anymore. That's what you have people working for you to do that, right? You're making business decisions, capital decisions, strategy decisions, and of course, people who's on the bus with us decisions. Um, and so yeah, it's like Yvette. I'm constantly paying, compliments to Yvette, but Yvette is one of those people. Liz Crawford, who I worked with at a startup many years ago, and went and ran product and engineering at Birchbox for a long time before going back to Australia. I've run into these incredible engineers who are really good business people, and they're amazing founders. They're amazing CPTOs. You've got to have the full picture to be effective.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I was very encouraged. I went to the first Mark CTO summit a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
and I was super encouraged that almost all the topics, both presentations, roundtables, and even hallway conversations, seem to revolve a lot more around business topics than in any CTO or technology event that I've ever been to before, which to me also indicates that our entire little universe is evolving, and we are seeing, and I couldn't be happier about it. We're seeing technologists become business people, executives, and leaders more and more, rather than kind of the road of engineer growth stopping at like, I can run an engineering org, I
Yeah,
can make technological decisions. It's pretty cool, huh?
100%. Yeah.
Is this the end of the road for us this week?
Might be, might be.
Well, good place to stop, right?
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for another week, Tom.
Cool. Thank you.